All right, let's introduce our player. Starting with the bottom left, we have Stephano from Team Millennium, wearing his ascot and probably eating a baguette right now. And, you know, it's okay. I mean, Stephano is one of those guys who loves representing France. He's just one of those guys.
Just like Moment.
Just like that NASL video,
dude,
man.
Absolutely
so
unbelievable.
Over
here in the top right-hand corner, the person that is 15 hatching, it is Liquid Zenio, who is up 1-0 in this
Best of 3 series. This is really interesting because I've been talking to a lot of top masters, GM level Zergs, and they're saying Daybreak. There's no reason not to hatch first in ZVZ, and I'm very interested in what Stephano's planning at this point, because this is 2 times in a row that he's going for 1 base openings here instead of going for a quick hatchery.
It is interesting. I mean, obviously you changed it up a little bit, but I think this style is much better overall. It gives you the agency to move into Baneling Zergling much easier. Not only do you have the gas accessible, but you also have the ability to just stay on Mass Zerglings as well. Mass Zerglings is actually a really nice way to just build yourself. And I guess, what am I trying to say here? It's really nice to actually have the initiative, take map control, and produce off of this, because when you have a lot of Zerglings and you have a lot of Zerglings on your opponent's side of the board, what ends up happening is they play a lot more defensive and they incur a lot more damage through, well, indirect damage, I should say. And it's making Banelings when they don't want to be making Banelings, making Zerglings when they don't want to, also making Spine Crawlers. And all 3 of those things really hurt the Zerg economy. It all is directly affected by, of course, the hatchery. So that being said, I feel like this opening overall is a lot better than non-Speedling. This is a really convoluted way of saying Speedling is really good because it forces Banelings. Gas is, yeah. Gas is really important. God dang it. What is... It's the heat, man. I'm telling you, it's the heat.
I'm like trying to take notes, and I'm like, yeah, this is all good for my CVC, and then halfway through, I'm like...
I just trail off, man. Okay.
But no, I understand what you're saying. You know, it gives Stephano a lot more options. You can see, because usually this is what happens in ZVZ. When you're going for 1 base, you have the option to pressure, because you can see at this point Zenio, he doesn't have speed for a long time. It's going to be about 2.5 minutes before he can get anything, and so he's threatening Zenio. He's getting his Bane Nest much earlier than he would like to. He's keeping drones on gas rather than pumping out minerals. So as a result, his natural isn't as safe, and Stephano technically one has map control. So there's a lot more things available to Stephano directly. As you can see, he's actually droning up. He actually took the lead in this scenario, and even got his Spine Crawl up a little bit later. So this was well played to kind of even out the economic thing. And so as a result, openings kind of didn't really play into effect, other than the fact that Stephano's over the map more.
Well, Zenio still did make 2 additional Banelings, and if you think of it this way, I mean, if I make 2 additional Banelings, that is not quite half a minute, maybe 26 seconds of mining time. So I could have my lair up 26 seconds faster than you. I can have my +1 missile attack 26 seconds faster than you. That's what I'm talking about. The gas allocation is so important in ZVZ. You need to be razor thin and make sure you're not making too many Banelings to be safe.
And safe it is. Zenio's making a 2nd Spine Crawler, and it's because, again, he scouted the fact that it was a late hatchery from his opponent, so he's not sure, what is Stephano doing, but Stephano is droning up like a clever bear. You see double Evo Chamber from Stephano, a little change of styles, going for a carapace immediately. Now, he should be going for +1 missile attacks here, but he's going for +1 melee. Interesting.
Yeah, that makes a little bit more sense, actually, for him, because you're investing so much gas into your upgrades. You are susceptible to a lot of different all-ins at this point, so don't overdo it. Your roach count is going to be pretty small, and if I just macro and have my +1, your double upgrade really isn't too effective. The reason why you get double evolution chambers for your Zerglings is to make them be relevant going into the mid-game stage. A lot of times when that +1 hits for the missile attacks, they're completely irrelevant, right? They don't matter just because Banelings and roaches just clean everything up. But with that +1 armor, it helps out oh so much.
Good to know, man. So we see a lair from Stephano starting up, and Zenio getting up his infestation pit immediately. Now this is a really quick infestation pit. In fact, it's about 8.5 minutes in the game. Zenio hasn't spent much on gas in general. He's got his Baneling Nest, a couple Banes, and lair. and his speed, of course. But other than that, he hasn't really been investing too much into it. We see a huge amount of Zerglings at the third, really shutting down, and a quick third attempt from Stephano. And that does come to the fact that he's making Zerglings, a lot of Zerglings, in fact, and he will have an abundance of minerals.
It is interesting how both these players are playing it out. Now, normally we do see this style from Stephano, where it's just double upgrade, and then you go into Infestors, or then you go into your tech. Normally it is Infestors, though. Zenio is swapping it. He's actually going for Infestors first, and then the tech. It will give him a couple of more options that are sneaky, but it does mean his Zerglings will have less presence on the map as soon as that +1/1 hits. And after that hits, Stephano should just be saying, I want to engage, I want to engage, I want to engage, I want to do anything I can possibly. Oh my gosh, Stephano again going to lose this third base. That is crippling right here.
Oh, wow. And Zenio's making a Baneling also in the midst of the ruins. You know what's interesting is Zenio actually has a second Baneling nest in production right now. As he's going to engage in the middle of the map, you see the Zerglings just trying to whittle down the numbers. As you can see, Zenio also placing a couple of Banelings here just in case he can trick his opponent. You can bait them up the ramp. And those are just small little tactics to give you an edge in battles.
We'll go ahead and see this. Now, there are a couple Banelings waiting at the third base, and Stephano needs to react. Oh! That was scary.
Very nice blast there. You can see another Baneling also under siege, but the Zerglings trying to see if they can shut down the third. They do pick off some of these drones, which is going to make it a little bit difficult for Zenio to deal with. But he's got Infestors out, and if he can fungal those Zerglings, really keep them in place, it'll be really, really beneficial. Or he could lose his third.
Oh, no, and he might. Okay, I thought he was going to lose Infestor as well. It looks like Zenio will clean up a lot of those Zerglings. Now, I do want to say that's pretty larva efficient for Stephano. Excuse me, no. Larva efficient for Zenio. Off of this, I'm not quite sure where Stephano goes here. He doesn't have a ton of units out in the field, and also he doesn't have a macro hatchery, and that's one of the most important things when you are going any sort of Zergling style. You need a macro hatch. It's super important because the larva, you just don't have enough larva to spend correctly. And you can see Stephano is actually racking up a ton of minerals, 1,000, 1,200.
And the third is also going to drop as well. Again, Zenio doing a fantastic job. And just by the sheer amount of it, Zenio will just have a simple production event similar to game 1.
Yes.
And you see that Zenio is still going to just get everything else pretty normally, get his Roach Warren finally, as well as a couple more Infestors out. We see Stephano taking up to Hive very quickly here.
That's just for the upgrades at this point. He doesn't have the capacity to make anything really from that Hive, just because he's only on 4 gas. And when you're at 4 gas, you just don't have the capacity to spend that adequately and get all your essential upgrades, which are adrenal glands and your +3/+3, which take out, I think it's like 700 minerals, 700 gas. Is that right? That sounds right.
+3/+3?
+3/+3 and adrenal glands.
I think adrenal glands, I thought it was, oh yeah, you're right, because of 300, but yeah, you're right. So that is 700 gas worth of stuff, and even then, Stephano doesn't really have a direct answer to Zenio's Infestors, other than to try to see if he can catch him out of position.
Yeah, that's a tough position to be in. I mean, really both these players have their equal amounts of Infestors, but a lot of times it just comes down to, you know, your Infestor positioning and your ability to really use them and not clump them up, because all it takes is a couple of really good fungals and all your Infestors just pop in an instant. So Stephano obviously needs to be very due diligent with that. He will clean up all these Zerglings over here on the left-hand side, but 3/3 is on the way out. No, just +3 Carapace is on the way out. There it is, +3 missile attack, or melee attack, and Adrenal Gland starts. But the 4th base of Zenio has already started here, so Zenio is always ahead of the curve. This is tough for Stephano.
Stephano is playing like ZVT style. He's going for ultras really quick. His chitinous plating has already started. And yeah, I mean, ultras, if you can lock down the roaches with fungal growth, it actually can do a surprising amount of damage, especially with their bonus damage. But it's been so long since I've seen ultras this fast, like a rush. Usually sometimes you tech switch, maybe kind of surprise your opponent. But what do you think about Stephano's build this time? It's very unusual.
Yeah. You know, I think trades are actually really good for Zenio at this point. Zenio should realize that, hey, I'm on 4 base. My opponent is only on 3 base. Any trades at this point is really good. So Stephano is doing a very weird build here. Going ultras at this time, I guess I'm trying to think if it works or not. I actually have to think about this a little bit more, but I just feel like it leads itself for a gigantic timing. Think about it this way. You get that 700 upgrade, which is the +3/+3 and the adrenal glands. That is 2 minutes worth of your gas. So basically all your ultras are going to be significantly, not weakened, but they're going to be slower to come out. You don't have the capacity to have a ton of them out on the field. So if I just focus them down, which is very plausible with roaches, with hydras, with infested terrans, then really their relevance isn't that large. And you know, you can pretty much hit some critical timings and just overwhelm your opponent. I'm not sure though. I'm very unfamiliar with this current build.
That's totally fine, me too, because the fact is we're so used to seeing Roach Infestor, Roach Hydra, maybe even Mutalisk as kind of the wild card. But Ultras is very unusual. You can see that Stephano is really just trying to cover his bases. His first Ultras are out into the field. Now keep in mind, Ultras literally take twice as long as Roaches to make, so reinforcing is going to be really tough. Stephano's going to have to optimize his Ultras very well.
But here we go. And here's the thing. Infested Terrans are going to do so much damage here. Fungal growths galore onto the Infestors, which is so bad. It forces the Infested Terrans from Stephano. But look at that. Stephano is just going to crumble immediately. The fungal growths on the Zerglings was just way too much. And this is the exact timing I'm talking about. My God, and these Infested Terrans weren't actually able to do too much. He actually put down way too many, but I still feel like that was the perfect trade overall, and you know, killing those Infestors are pretty clutch.
Well, you know, Stephano does have his chitinous plating and +3/+3, so it's gonna, I mean, those Infested Terrans do have some pretty good DPS, but overall, Zenio is, the big thing is that he's running out of Infestor energy. He only has one Infestor left in fact.
Man.
So here comes Stephano with a huge timing. Ultras are trying to come in without Zergling support, trying to see if he can go for a flank. The third under heavy siege as well. Zerglings are going for the spine, but here comes a huge engagement. Fungal on the Roaches from the front, but Zenio, his Hydras have so much DPS, are finally pushing back the units.
This is really off-timed. You can see a couple of Zerglings and Ultras on the bottom over here. There was a hit squad of Zerglings to go into the bottom right-hand corner, but that got intercepted by Roaches. Again, Roaches are very efficient at cleaning up Zerglings, even though, you know, the upgrades do favor Stephano.
Yeah.
He can't necessarily two-shot all of these Zerglings, but they're still very, very cost-efficient, and they're able to tank the damage for their Spine Crawlers to do a ton. And again, Zenio is going to go for the trade here. I think it is correct. You don't want your opponent's Infestor Ultra count to get out of hand. If you just sit and wait until max, it would actually be terrible. He just slowly trades out those Zerglings for additional Ultras or Infestors, and he can lock your entire army into position and basically do some crippling blows. So Stephano is still doing well, surprisingly, I think.
Yeah. It's making it hard that Zenio can't directly attack into him because, first of all, Ultras, I mean, they have that frenzy, so they can't get snared.
Yes.
So it's just like, even if you fungal them, it's like, well, I can just keep running into you. So as long as Stephano positions correctly, but look at this, some of his units are cornered, or he's trying to bait the units into a bad position. The Ultras are trying to come into here, but they're kind of clumsy, not able to get the AoE needs. There's the fungals here from Stephano. This is the dream scenario. Look at the Ultras go, and all of a sudden the supplies will start favoring Stephano slightly.
Wow.
And Zenio, with a very bad engagement, got baited perfectly by the 3 Ultralists. Very nice
impressive.
Job.
Very impressive, but there is a counterattack squad going into the natural. That gets cleaned up pretty easily by the Ultras. Again, the 3-3 Ultra, or excuse me, the 5-3 Ultras with the 3-3 Zerglings are looking to do pretty well, but really the Zerglings, they're just something to make out of the larva at this point. They're actually not doing a lot in this engagement. As he slowly starts to trade them out. But I think the main thing that he has to be careful. Wow, this SimCity is awesome. It's not really SimCity, it's just a ton of Spine Crawlers. This will be very effective against the very clunky Ultras. Infested Terrans being popped out here. I don't know if Stephano can actually do this, Frodan.
Look at the AI from Ultras. They're just wandering everywhere aimlessly. And, I mean, despite the fact that Zenio is losing ground here, he's losing a lot of his significant Ultras, and his Remax ability is going to be very low. Zenio immediately making a lot of units. And you can see, like, even though Stephano crushed his base, the supply count is still not that bad in terms of overall picture, because these Ultralists cost so much. And as long as Zenio can kind of stabilize and hold his defensive position, he should be okay. But you see that Stephano is also running low on fungal energy, another key factor going to the next battle.
Honestly, I didn't know the Ultras have this type of destructive power here. I thought Zenio was going to clean that up pretty nicely. He still has the supply lead, look at this. He is segmenting off the Ultras, forcing them to engage against drones. That's actually not a great engagement for the drones.
Drones do 5 damage. Ultras have 6 carapace. Figure out how that one ends. But look at this. Stephano loses almost all of his Ultralisks, down to just 4. And again, the big story is that Ultralisk not as hard, or sorry, not as easy to replace in terms of Roach Hydra or Infestor Zerglings, whatever you want to call it. Now, Stephano does have some Zerglings and beings being made, but the big thing is that Zenio is already preparing his Greater Spire. And
yes.
when Broodlords come out to the field.
Well, here's the other way that you can actually go against Ultras. You can actually just make a ton of Infestors, and it is a little bit harder, but you have a lot of good harass with Infestors, and as well, you can trap the Ultras inside, like, the cocoons. You can make it so that they don't move at all, and it makes the Roaches and Hydras a lot stronger.
Fungal stops the morphing from Broodlords?
Oh, no, I was talking about the, excuse me, what Zenio can do against Stephano and his Ultras.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So you
I
basically
thought
surround
them from morphing the Broodlords. I'm like, that's OP, man.
That would be OP, though.
But, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. If he could get that, it would be really optimal. But
it's weird. He's been making Hydras this whole time. And I feel like Hydras, yes, they don't take full damage against Ultras, but I think they're suboptimal in this position because you need that mobility. You need the ability to kite back and forth. And with Infestors out, you know, and of course Hydra's not being super fast, I don't think it gives Zenio a lot of options. So I think Infestors would have been a much better investment in terms of resources and gas allocation. But
at the same time, I think I like the sprinkling of Hydras to add DPS, especially against, you know, an Ultra, this composition. But what's so weird is that Stephano, he has his composition, but he hasn't been able to get the position he needs to. You can see that he's clumping everything here outside because he's expecting an attack from Zenio. He needs a lot more time. And now there's an interesting dynamic in ZVZ. I was playing the other day, and it was just like, you can overmake Broodlords, and as soon as you make Corruptors and you have really no answer to the Corruptors, then you run out of options. So you have to be careful not to overmake. And I was asking Bitter, and he was like, yeah, around 5-6 Broodlords is all you need. If you have any more, you're in danger of getting counter composition, and then you won't have time to rebuild anything else.
Yeah.
So Zenio has to do this very carefully. Stephano's not out of it by any means, but Zenio definitely has a strong advantage.
I think so. I mean, right now all the initiative goes to Zenio, just because he has the Broodlords on the field, and Stephano has to react. As you said, it just puts so many different timings for him. And now also, it's important to mention he has the Hydralisk and a ton of Hydralisk to help out with this. Infested Terran are going to pop out right here, but I think this was a little bit off time. He's going to try to snipe for some of the Broodlords, excuse me. But nice Fungal Growth goes down on top of all of those units. And look at that, Stephano will fight back here, and he's doing a great job.
These Corruptors dropping is very bad for Zenio. That means he can't necessarily push in unless he gets a really good position for his Broodlords to be protected by the aid of the Hydralisks. And so all of a sudden you see that Zenio's falling back despite him having a pretty decisive supply advantage, especially in the army. You can see 135 to 114. Stephano, he's making his own Broodlords now, and this is becoming a pretty split map scenario. This is pretty interesting, and 98% of ZVZs never get this far, Andre. In fact, this is probably the second time I've seen it go to like Ultras and Broodlord stage.
It's kind of surprising. Now, there's a lot of debate, I think, on the ultimate composition. I think I like Infested Broodlord Corruptor the best, but on a map like Daybreak, it might be a little bit hard to do that, especially with all the different counter-attacking paths. But I think if they mine out Corruptor, Broodlord, Infestors, and Ultras, I should say, is the best way to go. And that's exactly what Stephano has. Although he might have a couple too many Ultras at this point. I'm not sure just yet.
There is such thing as too many Ultras.
There is such thing as too many Ultras. And the big thing with that is that Ultras are just very supply heavy.
Yeah, and they're hard to reproduce as well. We see that Stephano trying to go in from the north flank, the 3 Ultras out of position with no real aid. And you can see the Infestarians coming in from Stephano trying to see if he can break this position. Zenio has his Spine Crawlers in aid, but the Broodlords here from Stephano are a pretty good number. You can see that at this point, supply is very much favoring Zenio, but that's because of the Remax. Stephano really doesn't have as much resources in terms of being able to Remax. Corruptors do manage to finish off, but there is so much going on, Andre. I can't really make out all the action.
Wow, that is actually ridiculous. Now, the big thing is Stephano didn't have any upgrades into his his missile attacks. And the Infested Terrans weren't able to do enough damage. They got cleaned up so fast as well. And now off of that, the Broodlords are very out of position. They don't have anything to actually defend it. And Zenio is going to come out way ahead. Yeah,
these Broodlords represent not just gas resources, but a lot of time. And Stephano had a really time-intensive composition. Ultras, Broodlords, Corruptors. These are some of the most costly things, especially because Stephano doesn't have that many Infestors left also. You start off with 8 or 9, and now only 3 resemble a broken faction. You can see Zenio going for another run by the top left. And this time, Stephano really can't stop it.
Yeah, and you know, a good way to actually look at those battles is to see if those Infested Terran actually gain traction. Obviously, that game, we didn't see that at all. If the Infested Terrans were able to pop out and do some damage, maybe he would be in a good position. Obviously, the Spine Crawlers were targeting down the Ultras that whole time, but if they target down, let's say, the Infested Terrans instead, he would be in a reasonably better position. But still, Stephano is in a very tough position because he doesn't have the ability to move around in supply, or excuse me, in unit composition. And the main reason for that is look at the upgrades: 0-0 for his air and 0-3 for his missile attacks. That's really tough. So he's kind of relegated to going Zerglings, Ultras, and I don't want to even say Broodlords because, you know, his upgrading has been so poor this game.
Yeah, and upgrades really play in a factor, especially because there's a part of ZVZ where it becomes really hard to attack into people. You can see with those Spine Crawlers, Zenio was really pretty much unmovable, especially if you can hide his Broodlords and, you know, his Hydras behind him. Those are the most vulnerable units. You can see a run by last night, the bottom right base, tit for tat. You can see Stephano loses a base, takes one of those Zenios. And now it gets to the point where players are starting to run low on income.
Yeah.
This is going to be tough. They have kind of 2 bases mining, but not really, if you try to combine all efforts. But
you know, and these Infestors are really weak. That's the big problem. I just want to keep spotlighting this. It's unfortunate because I think Stephano was in a great position. I think he has a great army composition. It's just his Infested Terrans do like no damage, man.
And he's going to send his Infestors forward and have a huge shift click of his Infested Terrans trying to burst it all at once. And here comes what could be the final battle. As you see a lot of Infested Terrans. Actually, there are more Infested Terrans than any other unit in the game right now. The Ultralists trying to go to work, and the Queens also there, not really transfusing that much. As you can see, Zenio is bringing back his army of Hydras, Infestors, Corruptors, and Broodlords. And it looks like Zenio still is the one who gains positional advantage.
Yes.
And if Stephano loses this base, that is very bad news, as that is pretty much his strongest income source.
He has no reply to the Corruptor Broodlord Infestor combination. That's so difficult. And a big thing was the fact that Stephano actually lost all of his Infestors in one huge fungal, and that's why he had to throw them all down. He had to throw down all those Infested Terrans. But you're going to see, yeah, the Ultras cleaned up everything on the bottom, but what about the stuff at the top?
Yeah, and he's not going to really be able to even hold off this force that well. He's going to push back the Hydras, but the Broodlords can stay up there all day. And they don't need to, I mean, Broodlords don't even operate on gas, so they can pretty much just float up there indefinitely. As you can see, Zenio is playing everything else.
Trapped in there.
One lone Ultra. Look at that, Zenio even dropping changelings to try to mess up the UI interface of the Ultralists. That's pretty smart.
And down goes the expansion. Stephano's in a terrible position. And it looks like he will be 0-2 this game. I don't see any conceivable way for him to come back into this.
Yeah, Zenio, I mean, he's doing a good job too, just really trying to draw attention away from Stephano. In fact, this is tactics that Stephano used in all his matchups to really draw away his attention, send some roaches, really cripple the economy. But with this outer base under threat, the 4th base, the final real mining base of Stephano, if he can't hold it, that is it. And Stephano, you can see that he has nothing really left here. Just a couple of Ultras, Corruptors, and 1 Infestor to face off against this army. And Zenio with really strong upgrades and great unit composition. It's going to clean up the rest of this army as the drones trying to sneak past the army, but that's not going to end very well.
Yep. That's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. Stephano. Oh, man. I really thought Stephano was going to take this game.
I mean, Stephano, he had a pretty interesting idea, just that his composition combined with his timings.
You can't be complacent with not getting the +1 missile attack. That's one of the big things. You need to move around to have your Infested Terran be a little bit stronger, to have roaches still prevalent. Because as we were talking about, well play comes out from Stephano, by the way, and Zenio will take a 2-0. But as we were saying, I mean, you said it, when you go Broodlords or you go Ultras, and there's a big, I guess, trade, you need to make sure that you can make something that's, that's relevant. And roaches, roaches are at least something that can do something in the game. You can go for these little run-bys that have a little bit more substance to them. They have a little bit more power. Zerglings are good, but they can get shut down very easily. So overall, I felt like Zenio was just in a much safer and a much, I guess, he was able to make better decisions because he knew he was always safe after the trades, whereas Stephano, he was forced to make a ton of Zerglings, and it's wasted supply going into these different areas.
I just think against a smart Roach Hydra player that many Zerglings is not that great, just because, again, Roaches actually are pretty, they ball up really easily, and so it's really hard, especially if you're not getting upgrades in comparison to them. Stephano tried starting +1/+1 really early, but in the end was not really able to capitalize on those things. If they go for Hydras, normally you see sometimes they try to incorporate like Banelings to snipe the Hydras sometimes, but in the end, Stephano just fell a little bit short. As you can saw, that was a very back and forth DVZ, and in the end, Zenio is the one that comes up on top. We want to thank our sponsor of that game in the series, Game Miner, the smartphone application that reminds you about upcoming NASL broadcasts as well as the upcoming game demos and releases.